On episode 267 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn the top practices of the world's best coaches with Emma Doyle. Hey there, this is Mirabon. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I just got back from the US Open in New York, had a super fun time, saw a few friends there, saw some great tennis, tons of people there as well. So definitely tennis is still thriving no matter what you see, you know, in the media or wherever else or from your friends. But yeah, really great to be back as I am every week. And today I've got a great interview with you with my friend, or for you with my friend Emma Doyle. And she's going to talk about the top practices of the world's best coaches. She has written a new book called What Makes a Great Coach, which I highly encourage you to check out. And I have links to that on the show notes page. And the website that Emma mentions that you'll hear later on is whatmakesagreatcoach.com, and you can get her book there. And she also wrote another book called What Do I Wear on My Feet to Play Tennis, and released that at the same time as What Makes a Great Coach. But yeah, today we'll get into a lot of different practices that you should know about, you know, both for finding a great coach, being a great coach, as well as, you know, self-coaching too. These traits come into play as well. Things such as curiosity, energy, listening, belief, purpose, the snap release technique, which is very interesting, how to short circuit the experience of someone else to your advantage, how to build your resilience, being in the present moment, and much more. So these are some topics that we will talk about in this episode. So I hope you really enjoy it. And without further ado, here is my interview with Emma Doyle. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. And it's always an honor and a pleasure to be speaking with Emma Doyle. Emma, thanks so much for coming on to the show. It's great to see you again. You always bring that great energy, so I really appreciate that. And Emma has come out with a new book, which I'm super excited about, which is What Makes a Great Coach. And yeah, it's something that we all need to know about, even if we're players as well, to try to find, you know, the coaches that have these qualities. So yeah, Emma, thanks again for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think it's such an important topic to even discover your own inner coach. So there's not just, you know, what makes a great coach in somebody else, but it's also how do we coach ourselves, especially when we're on the tennis court, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah, no, what a wonderful point to start off. Yeah, I mean, self-coaching, as they say, is super important, and you can either self-coach yourself to destruction or, you know, to victory or somewhere in between. So, yeah, really excited about it. And I guess first off, I'm really curious, you know, how the book came to fruition. So maybe talk to me a little bit about, you know, background on like what inspired you to write it or any other pertinent details.
Yeah, would love to. So basically, it was 2016 when I had one of those random moments where Roger Federer was playing in a pro-am and he was walking back to his helicopter and he sort of accidentally turned and put his arm around me, not on purpose at all. I was just in the right place at the right time, and I knew I had about 30 seconds with him. So I got to ask him two questions just really briefly, but the second question was what I call my guiding question. I said, hey, Rog, you know, 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what do you think makes a great coach? And after his response, which was someone who listens, I was a little bit taken aback with that answer. I just didn't expect it from one of the greats. And so I was like, oh, that is like, I've always been fascinated, even since when I first started coaching at 14, like what does make a great coach? Like how can I become the best coach that I can be? And so that kickstarted my podcast, the coaching podcast, where our third question, as you know, because I've asked you this question on my podcast, in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach? And so that turned into data of over 500 coaches. Now, of that data, 328 were tennis coaches, 105 were business coaches, and 71 sports coaches from 21 different sports. And by the way, that total is 502. And then we had tennis players. And of that, we had, that made 504 tennis players, we had 16. And of those 16 players, 7 were former world number ones who I got to ask this question. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of the data behind then what we synthesized into the top 10 practices of what makes a great coach. And listening came in at number 3. And in the book, listening is practice 7. And we call them practices, of course, because we don't just go, oh, listening, yeah, I do that, or, tick the box. It's an evolution and it's a practice. As you well know, we have to practice it every time we're speaking with somebody, and as coaches, and even listening to yourself. What is your inner dialogue saying when you're out on the court? What's that, your inner cheerleader? Is it for or against you? And I think being able to listen is a huge quality, supported by, in the book, people like Judy Murray, obviously, and Andy and Jamie's mum, and a great coach in her own right. And Patrick Mouratoglou, previously Serena's coach, obviously working with Simona now, he said you have to be able to hear what the player is thinking. So really looking at beyond the surface level. And I think it's so important even for players listening. I know a huge part of your audience are players, to say, does my coach listen, and does my coach ask great questions? And that's a real through line of the book. So thank you for letting me share it. I'm so excited. I can't believe 6 years of my research finally synthesized into the top 10 practices.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. And yeah, I guess digging deeper into listening, I mean, has there been any instances of you either observing a coach or having a coach that maybe didn't quite listen, and then what was the impacts of that versus having a coach that actually listens to the player?
And look, I'll put my hand up and say I wasn't a good listener in my early days of being a coach. I say that in the book. I'm very vulnerable in some of my stories because I think, honestly, it is one of the biggest problems when I just go out randomly and when I watch a tennis lesson. I think it's one of the biggest areas for development. There's not enough questions of the player and not enough ownership on the player. So the problem is when a coach doesn't listen and truly listen to what the maybe the root cause is of something, it's very easy to jump to conclusions and just see an outcome. Oh, you need to follow through higher, when really maybe it was nothing to do with that at all. Maybe it was something that's been going on for the person off court, that they just are off their game. So, sorry, I just dropped the book because I was so excited. We can't have that. We got to have it go. There we go. But basically, one of the biggest problems when coaches don't listen is that they're not allowing learning environments to facilitate problem solving. And practice 1 in the book is decision making. So this is one of my core philosophies. What makes a great coach is someone who empowers decision making within the player in front of them. So and I'm talking from a young age, and even if you've never played tennis before, rather than me saying hit it cross court, right? Even giving a decision like, do you want to go cross court or down the line? You're actually teaching them about 2 directions. So maybe they can only handle 2 directions because they're only just beginning and there's so many cues coming at you. But that's a classic example of what happens when people don't listen and that player hasn't been allowed to make decisions for them in a match. They'll crumble under pressure. So maybe people out there listening might be able to relate to that. If you've got a coach that does a lot of basket feeding and that's all they do, if they do a lot of telling you what to do and not asking enough questions, then you may find that player under pressure will struggle.
Yeah, I really like that point because I felt like up until many years ago, like I was pretty weak at picking up strategy and tactics, and I feel like that potentially could be maybe, not saying I had any bad coaches, but maybe I was given too many directives, and if you're just given directives, you're kind of like a robot, so like then you can't really use your brain as well, to think through other situations, and when we come upon new ones. So I really like that point. It's very important to develop or empower players to develop problem-solving capabilities. So,
correct.
Really like that.
Yeah. Thank you. And practice 8 in the book is curiosity. And I think along the lines of what you just were talking about, one of the coaches that I mentioned in the book, who's been one of my mentors, he sets up a fantastic learning environment where he says, right, I'm the coach and I'm going to hit every ball cross court. And on the fifth ball, you have to finish with an inside in forehand down the line. Go on the fifth ball. So even that activity alone hurts my brain. Even when I do it, I challenge myself and sometimes do that as a player, because you have to think about getting the ball on your terms, and you have to think about, where do I need to position the ball to be able to finish with an inside in forehand on the fifth shot. So that's just an example of, one of the activities that I mentioned to help develop curiosity. And that is so intrinsically linked to asking great questions, which practice 9 in the book is communication. So just a couple of examples of some of the practices that, as I mentioned before, are ongoing. It's not best practice, it's next practice. So I love that as an evolution of what's important.
Yeah, definitely. How has your curiosity as a coach developed over time?
Like with listening, I think, again, this concept of practice, it really was stifled when I was a young coach. And that was often because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I'd be in a meeting with what I would thought were, and they were more senior coaches. And so I'd have all these curiosity thoughts, but I didn't want to say anything for fear of looking stupid. Now, maybe even some players can relate to that. Maybe the coach is explaining a drill and you've got all these thoughts and you've got all these questions, but you don't want to say anything because you don't want to say the wrong thing in front of your peers. I know I really struggled with that. And then it wasn't until I got out of tennis altogether, when I studied business coaching and neuro-linguistic programming, emotional intelligence, that I was like, I can be curious and there's no such thing as a stupid question. There really isn't. If you're really curious and you want to know more about something, then ask it. And I think great coaches provide an environment and a great platform for people to feel comfortable to do that. And the better trust you have with your coach, obviously, the easier that is. So I'm excited how my curiosity has been allowed to blossom, because I think it was always there, just went through a bit of a stifling period. And I think now I love getting to know people. Like, every human's different. So the way that I structure my coaching is so individualized that it is important, even if you do have a group of 8 players across 2 courts that you're responsible for, the more you can tap into, when that person learns best this way, if I say this cue or I ask that question, I'm going to get a better result. Or if I go and speak to that person privately or in a softer tone, for example, that's, maybe that's how they're going to feel more comfortable sharing what they think about the activity. So that is really important to me. And I love being curious every day. And I love interviewing great coaches too, by the way. And you'd be so proud of me. We just got our first sponsor on the coaching podcast.
Nice.
And if I can just interview great coaches, I'm so curious about how they do what they do. And then it's a bit like the book. What my hope for the book, at the end of every chapter, as you know, we call practices, there's a whole workbook section. So it provides you reflection questions. For example, practice 2 is belief. So at the end of that chapter, you're asked about what are your 3 core strengths or superpowers. And if you don't know, then it's go and ask 5 of your biggest cheerleaders and see if there's any commonalities there. So just another quick tip there to say that we have to work on these things, and to build your curiosity skills requires you to understand how to ask open-ended questions, especially ones that begin with who, how, where, when, what, are great questions. Like, what specifically, one of my all-time favorite questions, to understand what's going on for somebody and what's going on for yourself. Remember, hey, what specifically is going on for me right now? And how do I need to change my state to be able to maybe shift my energy in a particular way? And of course, what is practice 5, Miraban? I know you're going to ask me. It is energy.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my my follow ups. I was just gonna say something about what you mentioned. You know, I feel like to a large degree, just the schooling environment kind of hurts people's curiosity. You mentioned how you were kind of a bit afraid to ask questions and make points, you know, with senior coaches. And, you know, I remember being in school, whether it was law school or even just before that, just when you were asked a question, sometimes if you said gave a wrong answer, you might hear some people laughing or the teacher getting angry or something like that. So it's definitely comes up from a young age a lot of times, and it's hard to shake off.
It
Yeah.
does. And I also
Yeah.
this you know the fear of not wanting to say the wrong thing, you know, and I think the more you can challenge yourself around that on the tennis court and off the tennis court, the better. And the more deeply curious you are, the better. Uh, you know, one of the quotes in the book by John Wooden, of course, if you want to be heard, listen.
Yeah.
So, you know, I love that one as well. Just and find a way to ignite that curiosity. Even Ted Lasso's quoted in the book there
Nice.
under curiosity. So
Cool. Yeah, I
yeah.
really enjoy watching English Premier League. So yeah, that's a fun show. Yeah, so obviously on energy, I mean that's such a huge one, and I feel also like when your curiosity is increased, that kind of gives you energy. I mean, I feel like that's the case for me. You know, if I'm doing something where I'm curious about, you know, like tennis, for instance, and I'm get energized and trying to figure out things. But yeah, so I mean, I guess energy, you know, both from a coaching perspective, and then also maybe how do players, you know, develop and get more energy.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why it's in the middle of the book, right? Okay. Because it's rather than think balance your energy, think it's a rhythm. Energy is a rhythm. It's never like a boat in the ocean. It's never perfectly balanced. So when do you need to, as coaches, we're all about giving energy to others and seeing greatness in others. So how do you then top up your own energy stores? So we talk about that in the book, energy top ups, energy giving, and energy traps. Understand what traps your energy. So even if you're at a tournament, and what do you need so that your energy doesn't get, you know, sucked in a certain way? Maybe it's being around certain people, or right before your match, do you need to be by yourself, or do you get energy from being more social? So really asking yourself those questions and understanding that energy and your state, especially in the match, is important, that you're able to manage it and harness it so that when you're playing the point, you're actually not thinking. So you're present, you're being fully engaged in just that point, which is around harnessing energy. And Matt Swallander, who's quoted in the book, he says, what makes a great coach is in the present. He answered it in a short statement there. And I really love that. It's a great reminder of how we get that energy ready to play the point, whatever that means for us. And then we're able to just be in the present and be in the present moment. And that's another thing to look for in a great coach. Is that coach distracted? Is that coach giving you their energy, which is what you deserve? And even listening to this podcast now, you're giving us your energy, and I'm very grateful for that. And so therefore being present and even taking one little thing that maybe I've said and adding it to your own playing toolkit or coaching toolkit and seeing what works for you is so, so important. That's one of my missions in life. That's why I call myself an energy coach and activation speaker. I want to encourage people to take action in the direction of their goals and their dreams.
Yeah, I love that, Emma. Great work there. And in terms of, you mentioned managing your energy during matches. You know, I've seen instances of players kind of getting hyped up a lot in the beginning and then like losing their energy. But you know, some players, like it seems like they're, you know, saying "come on" every point. So like, how do we better manage our energy during matches? What's the formula there?
Well, the formula is to know thyself.
Okay.
Which, by the way, Valerie Kondos Field, she's also mentioned in the book. She was one of UCLA's winningest gymnastics coaches, even though she came from a dance background. So she says, know thyself. So understand what you need to get your energy up. So if you are the type of personality where your energy needs to be more calm and more reserved, then perhaps if you're too high, one of the techniques that we talk about in the coaching toolkit, by the way. So I'll just pop that in now because why not? The book has 20 online coaching tools for anyone that buys 10 copies of the book or more. So if you've got a large team or you're in charge of a company, because this is, of course, written for business coaches as well as sports coaches, 10 copies or more, you get access to the coaching toolkit, which is 20 tools. So one of the tools that relates to what we're talking about is called the snap release. So you see here, I've got a hair tie on my wrist. And when I pull it up, maybe my energy it's a little too high and I need to be more relaxed. So I can pull it up and really be tough on myself. Come on, right? And then when I snap it down, I say stop or snap, whatever works for you. And then I take 2 deep breaths, just slowing down my breathing and just returning to a level that's going to help me execute. So 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, do that twice. And then I can fire off some sort of anchor or affirmation to help me stay in the present. You and I have spoken, we could do a whole podcast on anchoring and affirmations, but something like I am ready, or I am present, or I am here. Try not to go, I am awesome, I'm amazing, my forehand's massive. All right, you want to make it more about being in the present and returning to the present moment. So, and if alternatively, if your energy is too low and you need to increase it, and that's, again, think about your personality, think what helps you. Even 10 seconds of fast feet over the line is just going to, when you get up from the change of ends, you know, Nadal does the fast feet side to side, the just Chinese Qigong, just tapping all the meridians and just up and down the arm, tap, 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 and just even rubbing under the collarbone here is another good little technique that you can use just to feel connected to your body. Often when your energy is not high enough, you're not in tune with your body. It's like you may have experienced like concrete legs, or one of the players of the US Open this week even spoke about, I felt like I had concrete in my legs in that last game. So when those feelings are real, even the pros have those extreme feelings. And any level you can feel concrete in your legs. I don't care if you're playing in a 2.5 grand final. You can feel those things. So there's those techniques to manage your energy and harness your energy, but just know thyself. Know what's going to work for you, because it's definitely not one size fits all.
Yeah, definitely a great theme to remember. You've really got to experiment and see what works best for you. As far as belief, which I think we mentioned a bit, I mean that's an interesting one. A lot of people struggle with that, especially when you go on losing streaks and so forth. So I guess, how do we develop our belief, and how do we get it when we're on a bad streak?
Yep. So one of my favorite formulas for confidence, which is, again, in the online coaching toolkit that relates to practice 2, which is belief, is called the confidence formula. Now, the confidence formula equals time plus experience. Confidence equals time plus experience. Now, you can't really short circuit time. Monday can't go any faster than Tuesday. Yes, there is quality time, how you spend your practice session. But here's the thing. You can short circuit the experience of someone else. So look at other people that have gone through maybe a similar form slump, and look at what tools that they've used to help overcome that. So how can you short circuit the experience of someone else? Asking what their biggest failures were when they were in a form slump. What did they do to get out of it? And often it's just maybe one thing that they might say. And as I mentioned before, add that to your playing toolkit and see if that works for you. But there's no doubt the other concept, the other coaching tool that I talk about under belief, is just stretching yourself one layer at a time. Most people go in these form slumps and they try and jump out of their comfort zone, or they try and throw themselves in the deep end of a tournament to try and kickstart their slump. And that works for less than 5% of the population. You know what, Maribun? I've only ever met 3 players in my life where I just said, you have to step up and win for Australia today. 3. Every other player has been about the process. What is within our control? That's another great question, a great coaching question. And what can I do about my own improvement, such as my first serve percentage, such as my unforced error count in the net, such as how I prepare, what time am I arriving at my matches, am I feeling rushed? All the things that I can take control of, and what are those changes that need to happen, and how can I do that over 3 days, 21 days, and 3 months. If we want to make a change, it's going to take around 3 months of dedicated work. So I love those concepts, to be able to know thyself. There's that theme coming through again for this podcast, and really just connecting with what's going to work for you, so you can stretch yourself one layer at a time. So confidence equals time plus experience.
Yeah, such a great formula. So, on the topic of being in the present as well, like I know there's quite a few techniques and such. What's what do you think is the biggest advantage of being in the present moment? Because I know I've heard like Jorge Capestany talk about, like, I guess, like players, like either they're, the ones who aren't as successful, like a lot of them are in the past and then others are in the future. But what's the biggest advantage of staying in the present?
The biggest advantage of staying in the present is being able to trust your body and trust yourself, that the answers live within you. So if there's one thing even that a sports coach can learn from a business coach, when I define what coaching is, okay, it's unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It's helping them learn rather than teaching them. So if you take that, if you want to unlock your own potential and maximize your own potential that lives within you on that particular day, then you have to be in the present for that to flow forth. If you are stuck in the past, or if you are stuck too far in the future, then we're going to have things like anxiety come up. We're going to have things like maybe you feeling like you can't release your shots. And what that does is it's going to limit your potential. So the other reason why this is so important is, in the business coaching world, we believe that the answers 100% live within the player. Whereas when a teaching pro, sometimes, like if somebody comes to them for the first time, they're going to give them all the answers. So my deep hope for this book is that concept of believing that the answers are already within you. If you were my student right here and we've never met, I believe that you have potential within you right here and right now. And how do I help unlock that? By giving you strategies to help you stay in the present. And that will allow a natural ability to flow forth. And you know what the other coolest thing about this whole concept of, Sir John Whitmore was one of the godfathers of business coaching, right? He was actually from a tennis background, and he was studied with Timothy Galway from the Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah, cool.
So he used those concepts from the Inner Game of Tennis to create that definition that I just provided for you on what business coaching is. And for me, it's not business coaching, it's coaching. What makes a great coach is somebody that unlocks that potential, and to do that, working on being in the present moment, which we all admit is a lot harder than it sounds. But the more you can practice that, it's think and then not think and then not think, especially between points. And maybe this is a bit controversial, Maraban, but I hope there's not the coaching. Tennis is one of the purest sports where you have to work it out for yourself. Your character's exposed. You have to problem solve on your own, out on the court. So I really hope that we don't move too much. I get, from an entertainment perspective, it's interesting to hear what a coach has to say. Of course, I'm curious and fascinated by that, what a coach says in a certain moment. However, I hope that we don't move too far down that line, because I absolutely love when somebody's just faced with this big challenge in front of them, and how do they get out of it themselves, and has their training allowed them the tools to know when to hit what shot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they've got access to their coach, assuming they have one, before the match and after all that, most periods of their life. So, but it's interesting, because when I saw the coaching in a limited fashion at the U.S. Open at first, I was wondering, oh, wait a second, is this legal now? Which I guess it is, but it's like in a limited form. You have to be, I think, on the same side to be able to talk to the player and all that stuff. Yeah, it's kind of strange to see, but I guess we'll see. I guess they're going to reevaluate or, evaluate how it goes and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of okay?
I don't know where it's at. All I know is that I just hope it doesn't become where, a situation where the coach is the one doing all the directive, because we can learn so much from the business coaching world that it significantly altered the way that I coach. And I feel for the better. I see the biggest thing, the difference is in my players now, prior to when I knew about all this amazing stuff on business coaching, into my sports and into my tennis coaching. The biggest difference is I saw my players hold up better under pressure. They're able to perform under pressure. Now I work in the corporate world where people are under pressure. They're under pressure all the time. They've got to make a sales call. They've got to do a presentation in front of their colleagues. They have to get someone to sign a contract. That's coaching. They have to be able to have coaching skills to do that, because they have to be able to perform under pressure. So it's doing the training and then trust that in the moment you're going to say the right thing, or in our sport of tennis, you're going to play the right shot at the right time.
Yeah, I love that, Emma. And on the subject of purpose, you've let us know about your purpose, which is awesome. But I'm wondering for players and coaches, like, how do we? Because sometimes like we're out there and we feel like, what are we doing? We're just kind of like a robot out there, and we question, why are we even playing and all that. So, what are some pieces of advice you have for us on purpose? Because that's so important. On that can overcome periods of lacking motivation or stuff if you just remember your purpose.
So how did you know what practice 3 is? Have you read the book already? Practice 3 is purpose. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I actually, yeah. I've been checking it out.
All right. So I appreciate that question. And it is so important that we, as in all human beings, connect to something bigger than just ourselves. So even if my tennis I'm so passionate about it, and I'm so I'm pushing myself, and I train and I train and I train. If you have a higher purpose, if you have a bigger reason for why you're doing it, then motivation will be easier. It's going to be much more fulfilling and empowering to want to push yourself potentially to that next level, go through a bit of pain, so to speak. So having a purpose is huge. Now, how do we find it? Well, thanks for asking. Toolkit number 5 in the coaching toolkit, as I said, is what we call the purpose statement. So one of the ways that we find our purpose statement is you work through the 4 quadrants, and you ask yourself questions like, when I'm living my passion, who am I being? Another great question around those purpose statement questions is, what do I hold to be most important professionally, or it could be personally, or it could be in my tennis? Another question is, when I walk, for those people in my life who I care deeply about, what is it that I would want to gift them beyond a physical gift? And the final question to help you discover your purpose is the legacy question. So just even simply, even if you're early in your career or early in your playing stages, when somebody walks away from you, how is it that you want them to feel? What do you want them to leave feeling? And from answering those questions, you distill that usually into about 3 or 4 sentences, and then you try and get that into one sentence. For example, I harness energy and I empower people to see real possibilities beyond what they ever could have imagined, so that they can take action in the direction of their goals and their dreams. So that would be an example of a sentence where I've gone through those 4 questions and I've distilled it so that it is where I need it to be. So my purpose becomes easier, and my decision making, practice 1, becomes easier because I know how to make my decisions based on my purpose. Based on doing this podcast, is this podcast in line with who I am and my purpose, 100%. It's a no-brainer. It's like, can you please have me on the show again? I know I've been cheeky and been on a couple of times because I love connecting with you. I love just the conversations that we have, and we never know quite where they're going to go. And I'm so curious to know, like, and excited by that because it's in line with my purpose.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, such an important part of the disciplines here that we have in the book. And kind of more of a fun question, at least for me. Writing books, they are not easy. I've never done it, but I want to. But I've just heard from others just how much toil, and just many hours. So I mean, how long did it take you? How did it feel? Like, did you have moments where you were wondering, you had to go back to your purpose to keep you going?
Oh my goodness. Again, probably a whole nother episode where you could interview me on this. But what worked, my process was I locked myself away sort of for 4 days and wrote. I'm really proud I wrote that first manuscript. I wrote 55,000 words. That looks, by the way, nothing compared to draft 30, manuscript 33. So just, that's the interesting thing. I'm really proud that I did that. I needed the support of others. Writing, it doesn't come naturally to me. So if anyone is thinking of writing a book, I feel like I could help people on all my failures on what not to do. But I did engage the services of an amazing business coach, Natalie Ashdown, to help me finish the book. And in many ways rewrote a lot of things. And when her and I would chat about resilience, she would bring out these amazing stories in me, and she would bring out what I really feel about resilience. And she was able to then help me construct that based on what I'd already written. So she took what I'd already written. And that's what I love about this. And it has a feel, I'm relieved. I'm relieved that this copy is in my hand. I'm relieved that it's coming out this Thursday, the 8th of September at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for the whole weekend of the US Open. We're going to have a discount. It's going to be discounted. It's super cheap on Kindle. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. But it's just for the weekend of the US Open finals. But obviously you can buy it after that, but that's the weekend where we're hopefully see if we can move up the Amazon rankings just for a bit of fun. But really, relief is how I feel, and excited now because I get to just talk about coaching. I mean, how cool is that? And that was my process to lock myself away, right, and find your process. Some people it's write for an hour in the morning every day. Whatever your process is that's tip number 1. And tip number 2, engage a team early on to help you with your direction, which can then align your purpose with a great structure on how to write a book. The minute we got some structure in terms of the story, the why, the how, and the what, it became so much easier for me to put my thoughts into something that I really feel is super easy to read, and I'm glad it's in my voice. So this is not an intellectual manual. It's definitely it's my intellect, but in a way that's more conversational and story based from the people that I've met along the way and my own journey. So I'm really proud of that. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and obviously highly encourage everybody to check out the book. I've been reading it so far, and it's excellent. So yeah, let's get Emma up the charts here. And I'm curious too. Were there any categories or traits that almost made it that you were like, oh, I wish this made it, or anything like that?
Yeah. So 2 come to mind. Really, really close to being in the top 10 practices: patience and care. So they were 2 that really rated highly. And I think care is a lot of crossovers as well, because care is very much within empathy, and empathy was the 5th top trait. And if you think about really understanding someone, walking alongside them is the concept that we talk about in the book. Not just walk in their shoes, but can you walk alongside them to see what they see? That has to come from a position of care. So I think that one's really super interesting. I think also patience as it relates to communication. So to be a great communicator requires a great deal of patience, especially if, what I said earlier, if you as a coach or the teaching pro know the answer, You just want to give it to the student and you want to just tell them what to do straight away as it relates to where they need to aim their second serve. Just hold back, be patient, even as a coach, to help them say, oh, what if I move my ball toss here? Or what if I toss it further back? Will that give you more height? Well, even though you know the answer, well, why don't you do it and see? So I know you have a lot of your listeners, a great deal of players, people trying to maximize their game. If your coach continues to give you the answer and just tells you what to do or how to adjust your ball lift, for example, on the serve, on a second serve, maybe even invite them to say, hey, can you just give me a couple more goes at it first? Because I want to see if my body can adjust, or I want to see if I can work out this challenge on my own first. And then I'd love your feedback or something along those lines. I really hope that that's also what happens for people who are listening, and then take these concepts and apply them in the workplace for those within your team or your customers. Truly listening to what the needs of your customer is if you're whatever you do for a living, and if not, just have me come out and I'll come and speak to your team. No, just kidding. Well, not really, but please use the concepts to think about beyond the tennis court. This book is beyond forehands and backhands. It's a coach's way of being for people to discover their inner coach and also to empower the people that they choose as their coaches.
Yeah, it's awesome to see the crossover, not just tennis, but everyday life as well. Great stuff, Emma. So where is the best place for people to get the book?
Yeah, just check out whatmakesagreatcoach.com. So if you head to that landing page, you'll be able to see we've got our virtual book launch party. So please grab a champagne on Thursday night if you're here in the States. I know I'll be having one, and join us. There's a link there to register for the virtual party. Anyone in Denver, of course, we're having a party in person on Sunday, the 11th for the US Open finals. And of course, otherwise, you can go ahead and purchase the book. And why launch one book when you can launch two? Of course, Maribel, I have written a little kids book as well. It's very tennis specific. It's for 2 to 6 year olds. What do I wear on my feet to play tennis? So it's a coloring book. It's a little Dr. Seuss inspired rhyming book. The little character tries on a cone for a shoe. So all that information, you'll be able to find it on the landing page for whatmakesagreatcoach.com, because, why not? Why not? Like, why, might as well be an author of 2 books on the very first time. Anyway, that's a little crazy, but me, Maribel, I am a little crazy, but that's a website. You'll be able to go straight to Amazon with the appropriate links for here in the States. And if not, if you can't find the link, if you're listening from Europe, just send me an email, info@emmadoyle.com.au, because my mother always tells me to remember to go home.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you made the Guinness Book of World Records here. I don't know which, especially in the tennis and business coach realm that have released 2 books as their first book. I don't know if that's happened, but and totally different too. That's so cool.
Thank you. And how cute are these little mugs? They just arrived today, so I've got my 3 qualities on the back. So you can actually put your own qualities on the back, and what makes a great coach on the front. So these are my 3. The E factors: energy, empathy, and enjoyment are my top 3. And enjoyment didn't make the top 10 practice, but that's okay. So there you go.
The 3 E's for Emma with an E. That's how convenient that is.
Exactly. The E factors.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So cool, Emma. So wonderful stuff. I guess I'll ask you, this question, which you've heard several times to close, but can you, and you've given us so much today, but what is one key tip that you can give our audience to help them improve their tennis games? And obviously you can give it from an angle of coaching.
Well, one of the practices that we didn't touch on, which I think is one of the biggest areas for development in most people, is practice 10. Just made it in there, resilience. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's, as Darren Cahill says, it's not what we do when things are working, but what do we do when things are not working? And how do we get back up time and time again? Tennis is still a game for most of us who makes the least number of unforced errors. And in a match of 6-4, 6-4, it's still the difference of 4 points. And as we know, 45% of the time we're coming second in the rally. Okay. So we can't win every point. unless we're Monica Seles back in the day. I think she's one of the only few players that I can think of that would count how many points she'd lose, and she'd still lose 5 points, but, amazing on one hand. But park that for a second. Be resilient, and don't just be resilient. Get yourself some resilient strategies. Build your resiliency to be able to not be affected by anything. Even I played in a final the other day, and I didn't say, I took the emotion out of it, and I just used the shoe color of the two ladies I was playing. So one had pink shoes, one had purple shoes. So I just say, right, we have to do this with pinky, we have to do this with purple, right? So take the emotion out so that you can think between points, and then you can be in the present during the point. So that really helped even me the other day, and I think as coaches, we have to put ourselves under pressure. Not saying you might not compete so much anymore, or might compete in a different sport, but how do you find ways of being resilient and building your resiliency like we talk about in practice 10? And that would be my number one tip moving forward, because I think in this chaotic world, this agile world, things are constantly changing all the time. And even in this hybrid environment of finding that balance, we have to build boundaries around your resiliency so you can compartmentalize and bring out your best by staying in the moment. So that would be my top tip for today's podcast.
Nice. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, such a great quality to end the book on in terms of being the last one. Emma, thanks so much for coming on. And obviously, highly encourage everybody again to go to What Makes a Great Coach to buy the book, What Makes a Great Coach, obviously, and also your other very cool book, What Do I Wear on My Feet to Play Tennis? And then you also do have the option to go to Amazon if you desire. So yeah, great stuff, Emma. Yeah. Really great to have you on, and all the best with the launch as well. And I'll encourage everybody as well to try and get the book, the same week that this podcast comes out, and to hop on that special as well. You said it was if you get 10 books and you get access to courses.
Yeah, 20 online coaching tools that aligned with the top 10 practices. So if anyone 10 copies or more, and 100 copies or more, then I'll come out and I'll speak to your team to your team. So that's my we're super cheap this weekend. So 10 copies, it's a bargain for the online coaching toolkit, and 100 copies, and I'll come and speak to your team. So.
Love it. Well, thanks, Emma. I'm sure we'll speak again soon, and look forward to having you on the summit as well, and everything else, more content with you. So, keep up the great work, and congrats again on the books coming out. Everybody check them out, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. And remember, discover your inner coach. Take care. Bye for now.
Take care. Thanks. I really hope that you enjoyed my interview with my friend Emma Doyle, and if you did, then definitely check out the book that she wrote called What Makes a Great Coach, as well as her other book that she released at the same time, What Do I Wear on My Feet to Play Tennis? So definitely go to whatmakesagreatcoach.com or check out the show notes page for the links to that. There's also an Amazon link. And if you did enjoy this podcast, please leave a review. That's always appreciated and lets me know what you think about the show and helps the rankings as well, and the visibility and so forth. So definitely do that. If you haven't yet, on Apple Podcasts at tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts, or on your favorite podcast app that you use to listen to the show. And I'll leave you with a quote, as I do at the end of every show. And this one is by John Wooden. So speaking of coaches, great coaches, Coach John said, "Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become the best of which you are capable." I love that from Coach John Wooden. With that, thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to bringing you more top quality content moving forward. So take care, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, Mirban Ranshad, signing out.